Okay, back to variable view. Okay, this is where we tell SPSS at what level of measurement our variables are measured. And I mentioned a couple modules ago that SPSS basically gives you three options. And if you click in that cell, those three options pop up. You have nominal, ordinal, and scale. And scale stands for the interval and ratio level of measure. And then finally, role. So if you click on that cell, you can see the different roles that you can give to the variable. Typically, I'm always keeping that role at input. It's always at input. I haven't used anything else there. So let's go back to measure. You can create nominal, ordinal, or scale, and you need to tell SPSS what level of measurement it is. Let's take a look at these specific variables and see what the differences are. Variable number 1 is case number, and that stands for the student. And so if you recall, it is a number, it's numeric type data, but it only stands for a student. It labels a student, and that's why it's nominal level. This is how you can change it. I'm clicking on it and creating nominal. Okay, it's still nominal. Good. Same thing with term. Now with term, let's take a look at the values for term. So I put the earliest term at a 1 and the latest term for the data that we have at a 3. So technically you could call this ordinal level data because you can order this from the most recent to the one farther away. So if I change this to ordinal, just by doing that. And if you have a number that you need to copy down, you can do that just by the copy and paste commands. So I can copy, it's a little different on this type of computer, but you can do that. These variables, ACT reading, high school GPA, college GPA, Compass scores, and these grades, I'm telling SPSS that these are all scale variables. They're measured at the interval or ratio level. You could make the case that grades are more ordinal than anything else. They're especially ordinal if they're measured as A, B, C, D, E, or E, A, B, C, D, and F. But I have them measured as a 0, a 1.0, 1.5, 2.0. Let's take a look at that in data view. Look at some of these grades. Let's look at grade in Math 23. You can see some of the different values, 3.5, 2.5, 4.0, 1.5. Those are how the grades are measured, and so made the determination that they're be at the scale level. Okay, let's bypass those variables for a second. These are my recoded variables in grade. And if you remember, basically I've just recoded all of these grades into successful and not successful. Well, because that's the way I'm defining this, this is actually a nominal level variable. I'm just labeling successful, not successful. That's it. Nominal level. I'm not trying to order or rank the values. Let's take a look at this variable we just created, satisfaction with orientation. Don't know, very dissatisfied. What would you consider this to be? We talked about this in level of measurement. We need to tell SPSS the level of measurement. I'm going to choose ordinal. Okay, so essentially that's what the data file looks like in variable view in all those columns, and data view looks like an Excel spreadsheet. And just keep in mind that the cases are in the rows and the variables are in the columns. So if you ever need to set up a data file in an Excel spreadsheet, you would do it that exact same way. The cases in the rows and the variables in the columns. You can actually create a code book. This in variable view, this is very helpful because these values and these values of the labels actually give you the beginnings of a code book. But a real code book that you might compute in SPSS will give you a lot, it's going to give you a lot more information about each variable. So, I mean, even before you run any analyses or anything, this is a great way to get to know the data. So let's actually create something called a code book. The first thing you do is go up to Analyze, and you're going to be using Data, Transform, and Analyze, and sometimes Graphs. So if you go up to Analyze, you can see all these options, and Analyze is where we actually run our statistics. Under Analyze, and then Reports, so the very first one down, you can see right away where you can choose Codebook. So if I click on Codebook, it gives me an option to run it for certain variables. I could run it for all of the variables. I could just run it for one or two of the variables, whatever I need. If I want whatever I want to know about these variables. So let's move some over and take a look at them. How about if we take a look at ethnic? So you click on it and hit this button to move it over. Let's look at, let's say, we'll look at gender, and let's look at ACT reading score. Click on that and move it over. Okay, now when I select OK, what's going to happen is I'm actually going to get some output on my output window, just sitting back here behind everything. So, OK, and it pops up. This is what the output file looks like. It keeps a log of exactly what you're looking for on the left-hand side. So we're running Codebook, and we're running Codebook for ethnic, gender, and ACT reading. On this side, it does the exact same thing. This actually is telling you what's going on behind the windows. So the first thing that it does every time you run an analysis is it gives you the file name for where you're running this from, which is very helpful in terms of documentation. So here's what the Codebook output looks like in SPSS output. Here's my ethnic variable. It has 3 different positions. We didn't put any value, we didn't put any label in there. It tells you the type. It basically gives you the same information back that you have in the variable view. The measurement is nominal. And then it shows you the value coding, 1 through 4. And if you recall from the variable view, 1 is white, 2 Native American, 3 African American, 4 Hispanic. And in this analysis, it actually shows you the count at each value and the percent at each value. So this actually gives you a lot of information pretty easily. For your data files that you use in your analysis, you could run a code book on every single variable and keep it. And then you always have something to refer back to understand, oh, I can't remember. did I code female as 0 or did I code female as 1? Sometimes it's hard to remember that, especially when you need to do the interpretation. And so Codebook at your ready fingertips will help you remember that. So it's giving you a lot of information. Let's look at what it did for ACT reading, because gender and ethnic and gender were nominal level variables. So the way that it reported out that information is gave the values, the counts, and the percents. What did it do for ACT reading? Well, you can see it gave the measurement as scale, and so because we told SPSS that the measurement was scale, it gave a little different information for ACT reading score. These are some of the descriptive statistics that we're going to learn about in another couple modules. But it gave the N. The N is the total count that it has for ACT reading. So in our data file, 717 individuals have an ACT reading score. It shows you how many are missing. It gives the mean, the standard deviation, and then it shows you at what score the different percentiles are located. So all it's doing is showing you if you were to cut that 717 into fourths, where would those scores end up being? So basically 25% of, at the 25th percentile, 25% of that 717 have a score of 19 or less. 50% of the 717 have a score of 22 or less on ACT reading. 75% of the 717 have a ACT reading score of 25 or less. So that's what that's showing you. That code book is very handy to be able to give you information about the variables. So that's all we're going to do right now with getting to know a little introduction to SPSS. Have fun practicing a little bit with the data files. Thank you.